Have you ever felt like you were playing a game where the rules were changed while you weren't looking? You save your money, you improve your credit score, and you wait for that perfect moment to buy your first home, the cornerstone of the middle-class dream. But when you finally step onto the battlefield, you realize you aren't competing against other families. You are competing against a multi-billion-dollar algorithm that has already decided the value of that house before you even saw the listing. Why is this happening? Why is the dream of owning a piece of land becoming a luxury that only the ultra-wealthy can afford? There are many theories about inflation and supply chains, but today I will present to you the 3 structural pillars of the greatest housing heist in history: the institutional takeover of the neighborhood, the rise of the rental industrial complex, and the deliberate death of private property for the masses. By the end of this video, you will understand that you aren't just looking at a housing crisis, you are looking at a total architectural shift in society. Do you understand what is at stake here? Because if you don't own your home, who really owns your future? To understand how we got here, we have to go back to a moment of total chaos. Imagine it is 2008. The world economy is melting down. Millions of people are losing their homes because of predatory loans. At that moment, the average person saw a tragedy, but Wall Street saw an invitation. Have you ever heard the phrase, "buy when there is blood in the streets"? That is exactly what happened. Firms like Blackstone were forming new entities like Invitation Homes. Their mission was simple: buy thousands of foreclosed houses at pennies on the dollar. They weren't looking to flip them, they were looking for permanent yield. Do you see the difference? A home is a place to live. A yield is a stream of income that never stops. This changed everything. Before 2008, the idea of a giant corporation owning tens of thousands of suburban houses was considered inefficient. It was too hard to manage. But technology changed everything. Algorithms and digital management platforms allowed these firms to manage a global portfolio of individual front doors. They turned the neighborhood into a commodity. Why is this important? Because it changed the very nature of competition in our society. When you go to buy a house today, you are bringing a slingshot to a nuclear war. You have to ask for a mortgage and wait for an inspection. The institutional buyer arrives with an all-cash offer, no contingencies, and a closing date of 3 days. Guess who the seller chooses every single time? It is not even a contest. The market isn't broken for everyone. It is working perfectly for the people who own the vacuum cleaner. Let's use an analogy to explain the scale of this advantage. Imagine you are at an auction for a loaf of bread. You have $10. But standing next to you is a man who owns the bank, the bakery, and the wheat field. He doesn't care if the bread costs $100. He is essentially paying himself. He can outbid you forever because his cost of capital is near zero. This is what is happening in your neighborhood. While you're paying 7% interest on a mortgage, Wall Street firms can borrow money at institutional rates or use billions from pension funds. They aren't worried about the monthly payment like you are. They are worried about the internal rate of return over 50 years. Why would they ever sell? This brings us to a very dark psychological shift in our society. For generations, the starter home was the way a young family built equity. It was their forced savings account. When you pay a mortgage, you are slowly owning more of your life. But when you pay rent, you are simply funding someone else's empire. The ladder to the middle class is pulled up. We are moving toward a rentership society where you subscribe to your life rather than owning it. You are a permanent line item on a corporate balance sheet. You have no exit strategy. You are a guest in your own country. Have you noticed the rise of build-to-rent communities? These are entire neighborhoods built to never be sold to an individual. They are corporate assets from day one. On the surface, they look like the American dream. But look closer. There is no pride of ownership there. No long-term stability for the residents. If the corporation decides to hike the rent by 15%, you either pay or you leave. You have no leverage. This is the industrialization of housing. We have moved from home building to unit manufacturing. Now, let's look at the rental industrial complex and how it affects your reality. When a giant corporation owns 40% of the rental stock in a zip code, they don't just follow the market price, they create the market price. It's algorithmic. These programs allow landlords to coordinate prices without ever speaking. Does that sound like a free market to you, or does it sound like a cartel? Imagine a town where 70% of the houses are owned by a hedge fund in New York. Does the hedge fund care about the school? No. It cares about the net operating income. The social fabric of the neighborhood begins to fray because the owners don't live there. The concept of community is replaced by occupancy. A society of renters is a society that is easier to control and harder to mobilize. We are seeing this play out in real time across the globe. The financialization of housing means your roof is now a derivative on Wall Street. They are charging a toll for your existence. But why now? Why did this trend accelerate so rapidly? We have to look at the massive amount of liquidity pumped into the system by central banks. Big money had nowhere to go, so they looked at the one thing that is finite: land. In an inflationary world, the person who owns the hard assets wins. It is a double win for them and a double loss for you. They use cheap money to buy the hard assets you can no longer afford, then charge you inflated rent. Think about the impact on the next generation. If a 25-year-old realizes they will never own a home, what happens to their motivation? Why save? Why invest? We are creating a generation of economic nomads who are disconnected from the land. This is the end of private property, not by decree, but by price. In some cities, institutional investors are buying up to 40% of all single-family homes sold. This is not a glitch, it is a structural takeover. The neighborhoods you grew up in are being transformed, but the houses are only the beginning. What if the goal is to control the infrastructure of your life? A corporate landlord sees a data hub. They see a terminal for consumption. Have you noticed the bundled services in new rental developments? You don't choose your internet or energy plan. They benefit from the data generated by your life. You are the product in their digital ecosystem. To explain this, let's go back to the Enclosure Acts in 18th century Britain. Before this, there were common lands for everyone to use. Then, wealthy landowners used the law to enclose these lands. The people had no choice but to move to cities and become low-wage workers. They became dependent. Today, we are witnessing the enclosure of the neighborhood. The common dream of homeownership is being fenced off by institutional capital. Have you heard of co-living spaces? They are marketed as hassle-free and community-based. But look at the math. They maximize rent per square foot. They want you to believe that having less is freedom. But is it freedom if you can never build equity? You have been stripped of the foundation of security. Wall Street realized the most profitable model is the recurring subscription. Now, they want to unbundle the home. Everything is a subscription. Imagine your furniture and appliances are rented. If you want more, you upgrade your tier. Your cost of living never drops. It only goes up. Why don't we just build more houses? Because institutional investors buy influence. They lobby to keep housing scarce to protect their yield. Think about the REIT. It allows you to buy shares in real estate, but you are using your savings to fund the entity outbidding you for a home. They pay you a 4% dividend while they charge you 30% more in rent. It is a machine for transferring wealth from the bottom to the top. Historically, third places, like local pubs, were where community was built. But when a corporation owns the neighborhood, these spaces are commercialized. A community that doesn't own its spaces doesn't have a voice. It makes us more atomized, lonely, and dependent on digital platforms. Private property was the foundation of liberty. If you own nothing, you are at the mercy of those who own everything. You become a serf. The end of private property is a corporate revolution from the top. It is the consolidation of the earth into the hands of a few thousand portfolio managers. We are reaching a tipping point. As more homes move to the rental pool, prices skyrocket, forcing more people into the market. It is an exponential curve. But a system this dependent on constant growth is also fragile. The first step is to stop viewing housing as a product and start viewing it as a human right. We need to demand laws that prioritize families over funds. We need to rediscover the value of ownership, not just to get rich, but as a way to be free. They want you to be happy while owning nothing because a happy person doesn't ask questions. But you are here asking questions. You are dangerous to the plan. The algorithm can't predict your awakening. The end of property only happens if we agree to stop being owners of our destiny. Goodbye. I am Professor Jiang. The neighborhood isn't being sold, it is being occupied. And the only way to take it back is to realize that you are not just a tenant, you are the reason the building exists in the first place. Goodbye.